The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Nick Zulovich, the Senior Editor at Subprime Auto Finance News. In today's webinar, Data Analytics 101, learn the best ways to use data to identify what your customers want. We're going to learn more from Dan Wright from Podium. But before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items for today's webinar. Please make sure you've dialed in using the phone number provided in your communication email, or you're able to listen via your PC speakers. We are recording today's webinar, and we'll make the recording available to you as soon as possible. You will be in listen-only mode for this webinar, but we will reserve some time after the presentation for a Q&A session. You can submit your questions at any time through the questions box on the GoToWebinar control panel. And if we aren't able to get to your question today, don't worry, because we'll forward it on to the team at Podium so they can respond back to you directly via email. And lastly, if you have any difficulty during today's webinar, please click on the hand icon to alert a member of our team. So with several years of experience under his belt, let's get right to Dan Wright for our webinar. Dan, the webinar floor is now yours.
All right, well, thank you so much and appreciate everyone being on the webinar today. Great to be with you all and excited to really jump into data analytics. I'm sure when most of you saw that, thought, well, that's a pretty broad subject. What does that entail? And really, my goal here is just to make this as basic and as digestible as possible. I think for myself, I've spent several years in tech, and so data has been a buzzword for quite some time. At first, it was just data, and then the new buzzword was big data. And now people have a ton of data but don't have any idea what to do with it or how it works. So really, as far as today goes, the goal is just really learning the best ways to use data to identify what do your customers want, what can we learn from that. So my name is Dan Wright. I've been with Podium now for about 3 years. Something kind of unique about Podium is the fact that we're both backed and funded by Excel as well as Google Ventures. The great thing about that is that we get insights into some of the new stuff that Google is coming down and shoving down the pipe. And our goal is really to help individuals like yourselves learn not only what is this product, but specifically how can I use this product to enhance or change what we're doing. I think we can all agree that even 5 or 10 years ago, the way that we would connect with customers or the information that we would get from customers has completely changed. Think of, as we talk about data, we have never lived in a time where we have so much information about consumers, what they want, what their interests are. It used to be that even 10 or 15 years ago, we would send out mailers and have an idea of gender, income levels, and that was about all we had. Now we have companies, like Facebook or Google that have more data and insights into what customers like than anything else out there. I always like to remind individuals when we talk about why it's important to focus on those sites like a Google or a Facebook is because the great thing about Facebook is people are willing to just share everything and anything that's gone on through their day. What they like, what they don't like, what type of groups they like to follow, what age group are they. Again, all of the questions that seemed awkward to really ask or figure out, people just throw up on Facebook for free, or we can get that through Google and their data and analytics. So the great thing about our presentation today is that as we go through it, you'll find that about 95% of what we talk about and what we show is stuff that you can actually start doing today. And it's also absolutely free. It's one of the things that I really love about these companies, especially in tech, is they don't ever hold this information hostage. They actually want their consumers, people like you and me, to get access into this data and insights so that we can leverage it and know exactly how to target our customers better with insights. So when we talk about our agenda today, really our goal is to figure out, why does data analysis matter? Which data should we be focusing on? You know, there's a lot of data out there. I'm sure some of you are even rolling your eyes thinking about all the information that you have, and it's like, where do I begin? And then that last is just how to use data analysis to really improve your customer experience. So as we kind of go through our presentation today, keep those things in mind. My hope is that you would come today with a question of what you're trying to accomplish, and then through here you'll be able to figure out some new ideas, new ways to target and really engage with customers. And then again, our overall goal is just to make sure that you're improving customer experiences. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. So again, the great thing about tech, and you know, we don't have to go too far back to remember that we used to have these really big metal boxes in our dealerships called filing cabinets, where people would write down lots of information, way more than we would probably ever read. We'd store that information into a filing cabinet, we'd file it away, and then we'd probably never open that filing cabinet again. And the reason why was because it was too hard, or we'd have to hire somebody to go through all of these, you know, responses and feedback, and then they'd have to compromise or create some sort of PowerPoint or some sort of research information behind the data. And so as a result, a lot of us never really touched the data. We would just collect information, file it away, don't touch it, and then move on with our lives. And we never really knew. Marketing kind of became this game of, I'm going to put a little money here, little money there. We'll see what happens, and if I get a good return, great. If not, whatever. And then the great thing is, you know, tech started taking off. And we had this ability not to store stuff in filing cabinets. You think of the fact that not too long ago, we were having to buy encyclopedias, we're having to buy dictionaries. If I wanted to know what happened in the past, it could take me a couple hours to go research and figure out that information. And now, with just a simple cell phone, I can just go onto a Google or Bing or whatever, type in any question that I want to know, and within a matter of 2 seconds, I can figure out what date certain events happened or who was involved in certain situations. We have never ever lived in a more exciting time to be able to access data. But I think, again, the issues that we're running into is, as you can see here, everybody has created these products that now live online that are quote unquote easy to search and find information, but they live in different silos. So we have our CRMs, dealer management systems, social media, Google Analytics or Omniture, or even online reviews, and there are things like our CSI scores. And there's really no way that we're getting this information to talk to each other. Or someone will hand us a report, and then we get the report and ask ourselves, well, is this good or bad? What's really the purpose of this? Or, you know, what are we even doing with this data? So again, when we talk about data, I think the first thing that we need to understand or just think about really is start with a question in mind. What are we trying to accomplish, and what are we trying to focus on? I'll kind of go into this a little bit more, but as we work with groups like Ken Garf, they have this idea of what does a customer really want? That was their why. That was what they were trying to focus on as a group. Was, you know, we hear all the time from individuals, here's where you should focus, this is what we should do, but we now live in a day and age where I can just simply ask customers what matters to you and they'll give it back to me. And so that was the question they started off with, and I'll kind of go through this with you as we go on the webinar of how they came to the answer and now what is their tagline of their dealership, which is "We hear you." But we'll kind of walk through how that works. But I think the first thing that's important is for you to just get a piece of paper and then write down everywhere where you guys are currently storing information and data. Even if you have different products, make sure you're aware of those different things and brush off the dust, look in there, and see what you've collected. Now, as you do that, you're probably going to be a little taken back, a little probably scared at the amount of information that you have, and someone's going to say, wait, why are we using this product if we have all this information and no one's touching it? But that's okay. Again, the goal is really, as we talk about data, it's not so much to find the needle in the haystack, but to help us find patterns of what are trends and things we should be looking at. So as we talk about, you know, why this data analysis matters and why you should be making these lists, we need to understand that really the purpose of this is to really help improve our decision-making process, gain a better understanding of, one, what does your business do really, really well, and where are you guys dropping the ball? Where are you guys struggling? The next one is to become more efficient at what you're doing. You know, if we can, if tomorrow someone had said, hey, we have to cut your staff by a couple people, but I need you to continue to excel, what things could you do to help ensure that? And then the last one there, of course, is to improve customer experience. So just a quick story of why this matters. I actually spent several years in the survey industry. We worked with some of the actually top hotels in the industry. We were working with a specific hotel that said, you know, as our booking has gone down, and what we hear from people is that our hotel kind of looks older and dated, so they're getting ready to spend about $20 million to do a facelift on their hotel, change some things around. And luckily for this hotel, before they started giving out bids and doing construction, an individual said, hey, you know, I get that this is the focus and what we want to do, but would it be all right if we just asked some customers what mattered to them and what was important to them? And so as they asked their guests as they checked out saying, hey, we'd love to know your experience and what you think we can improve on, over 70% of the people said, the thing that we found most frustrating with your hotel is that there wasn't a restaurant where we could take our family. We actually had to leave the hotel to go and get food instead of being able to just go downstairs and find something like other hotels. So when this restaurant found this, or sorry, when this hotel found this, it completely changed their mind on what needed to be changed and fixed, and they actually decided to just scrap the entire facelift project. They took the $20 million. They were actually able to save their budget, cut it more in half, and then just go find a really nice restaurant that they could put in the downstairs lobby. And by that, they were able to increase their customer satisfaction and customer success just by simply listening to their customers, and rather than going by what they thought was best, just do what their customers were telling them. So again, these are the stories, and this is the impact that we're trying to have with your businesses and dealerships. As I'm sure a lot of you are coming to this thinking, hey, I know that I've got to get sales up. I know I've got to do this. And is it that we need to spend more ads and advertising, or is it actually something else that we haven't discovered yet? And as you collect this data and start sifting through it, again, you'll start to see patterns, and it actually becomes more exciting. I think really the best way that we should approach data analysis, or at least think about data, is kind of like a crime detective. Again, when a crime detective, and this is why we say, you know, don't be scared of data analytics, but when we look at you know, a detective, you know, I love, for example, Sherlock Holmes in the books as well as the movies. But the thing that's so unique about Sherlock is the fact that he's able to put all these little pieces together to figure out what the true story really is, which everybody just brushed over. So as we look at the data here, you're going to start to find, again, approaches as you would a crime scene, where we're starting to get information from social media, as well as our CSI, as well as our reviews. But what does this all tell us, and really how do we improve that? So the most important thing that you can do is actually just consolidate your data with integrations and open APIs. So what that means is, as we look at products like a CRM or your social media pages, these two products oftentimes don't talk to each other, meaning they don't share data, and so you have to log into 5 or 6 different platforms. Our recommendation, or the dealership groups that we see that do it best, will actually integrate or put all of their data into one area to where they can basically slice and dice and change things. Imagine making a cake, or when you bake something, it's important to have all the ingredients there together when you bake this, so that you know where to pull from and what to take. There's a lot of business intelligence solutions out there where you can look and do aggregate reporting, real-time view into business operations. And again, the most important thing is to have the one source of truth. I think the most, why data can be frustrating is you think of when people talk about an event they saw. Say, for example, when there's a car accident, sometimes we'll have, when we ask 6 or 7 different people, we have 6 or 7 different stories of what actually happened there. And so as we look at a business and sales for the month, we just came off a bigger, longer month. When somebody says, hey, why were sales down, or why did we do so good at sales, people will share their thoughts and ideas and opinions, but it's only because the sales people live in a different world than the service people, who live in a different world than the finance individuals. And so because of that, it's good to consolidate all of your information into one really easy, digestible area that becomes your one source of truth. Again, not that anybody's wrong or right in their different department, but that if we can get all of this information into one area and then start to look for the patterns, that's when we start developing the story of, hey, what actually happened, or what's actually going on here. So again, as we talk about this, the reason we're focusing or talking about this is really just to improve the customer experience there. So one of the big buzzwords that we talk about in what we call CX is sentiment analysis. So basically what that means is we will take thousands and thousands of comments, and we will run machine or basically artificial intelligence through it to say, hey, out of 10,000 reviews or out of 10,000 responses, what words do we see the most? Now, going back to my Ken Garf experience, so these individuals, as they were talking and saying, hey, where do we need to focus? They went through lots of data, lots of research. And one thing that kept popping up time and time again is the sales rep was pushy. I was trying to tell them what I wanted, and they pushed something else. They were pushing their own agenda. And so what they found was customers were getting really frustrated with the fact that they didn't feel like the sales rep, finance manager, or the service manager was listening to them as they were telling them what the issue was. Take, for example, if you were going to a doctor and he asked you, hey, explain to me what issues you're having, and you started giving those issues back, and they said, oh, that's great, but this is what I think it is. That's how the customers felt, and they're getting extremely frustrated. So as a dealership, what we typically find and where people go wrong is they'll see a bad month in sales, and they'll say, hey, we've got to listen to what customers say. And they'll talk to 3 or 4 different customers, and then those customers will say, well, this bugged me, this bugged me, this bugged me. And the next thing you know, someone's spending lots of money on free coffee or free soda because they had 2 or 3 people say it would be nice if you had an area where we could just get a drink. When the reality is we don't actually know what the problem is. We have the symptoms of upset people, and we know some of the issues that they have, but we haven't yet solved the problem. Maybe the only reason why people wanted a free drink was because the wait experience was so long. Again, these are the things that we talk about, or things that are important to focus on. So as we talk about sentiment analysis, where do we get this data from, or where should we look at? Obviously, Podium, where we focus on, is really customer experience. When it comes to sentiment analysis, where we go is online reviews, social media, things like Facebook, Twitter, and then Instagram, and then the comments section. Again, something that I find interesting is, surveys are great. They can give us great information, but I talk to a lot of people who get frustrated and saying, great, I know I'm a 5 out of 5 dealership, but why? I don't get why I'm a 5 out of 5 dealership, because I just have these scores. It's almost like a scorekeeper, but there's no information behind it. Or I hear people say, well, apparently I'm doing really bad. I'm a 2 out of 5 dealership, but I couldn't tell you why. I have no idea what the information is. And surveys are telling me this, but I'm hearing this differently. Again, this is where, when we look at online reviews, things like Facebook and Twitter, this is information that's unbiased, meaning we didn't sit and say to the customer, tell us about how the service was today. Maybe service wasn't even on their mind. Really, the questions that we need to be thinking about is, what did the customer take time to think about, or what is on the top of the customer's mind? When I say, hey, tell us about your overall experience today, what comes to mind? And that's important, because that's what they're focused on, and that's what really we need to be looking into. So again, as we look at online reviews, Facebook, Twitter, again, this is just information where people sometimes miss the mark, and they think Facebook and Instagram are just about likes. I promise you, you are missing the mark. Look at what people are saying. Look at the comments. That is the information, and especially with reviews, where if we can digest that, if we can, again, put that into platforms, things like Domo or other consolidation efforts, that's what's really going to help with the digesting the information. So again, we kind of went over this a little bit more. As we look to the right here, customers are 5.2 times more willing to purchase from companies with a great customer experience. Those are the things that customers like to talk about. You won't believe how amazing this dealership was. I actually just spoke with a dealership out of Idaho today. They said that they monitor their reviews very well. There was a lady who was very upset with the fact that they forgot to vacuum the individual's car when they did the service. And so when they saw that, they actually went and they called the individual, said, we want to make this right. Can we come pick your car up and make sure we clean it for you? They drove out there, picked it up, cleaned it for the individual. How big of a promoter now is that individual? What do you think that individual says about the service at the dealership? That they were willing to go pick up my car and clean it for me. Those are the experiences and the stories that get remembered. People typically, what I find is people don't remember or think about, oh, I'm a 5 out of 5 dealership. They remember the stories of the sales individual who found the car that was right for them, or the finance manager who was willing to look at some different options to get them the right car, or the service manager who took the time to maybe make sure they were well taken care of, went the extra mile. Those are the stories that people love and want to share with other individuals. So again, as we think about this sentiment analysis, I think that bullet point 2, help focus on marketing messages. I think marketing sometimes misses the ball where we'll, if you look at your reviews, when people give you 5 out of 5 star ratings, that right there, whatever that person writes as to why they gave it 5 star is what needs to be incorporated into your marketing messages. It also gives you key insights as to, hey, what are we doing really well? What's been interesting to us at times is the fact that we look at reviews and the scores and the data, and we'll compare that to CSIs or surveys, and sometimes it's completely opposite of what people think it is, which is why it's good to collect multiple sources to figure out. Again, see how your business is performing in key areas. I think one of the areas, and we can all agree about, is we look at absorption rate and the importance as car sales become tougher, or as they may stall in the future, or maybe slow down. Service is going to be so important when it comes to that absorption rate, and something we should be focusing on more and more. And I look at all of the service centers, like the lubes and tire centers that are popping up left and right. And the reason why they keep popping up is because sometimes we miss the mark at service centers. And I hear dealerships time and time again say, well, service customers are never happy. No one's ever happy to get their oil changed. No one's ever happy to go get their tires changed. I get that, but I hate going to the doctor, but I always appreciate when they take care of me. And I think that's what we need to focus on as maybe an area that's been neglected as we talk about performing in key areas. Is we get really excited about the sales area because it's awesome to see new car sales, and that's a big number, and that's where bonuses come from. But as you know, as we saw in 2008, when the economy or things are out of our hands, it's important to have a really strong, reliable service center and really start to measure that more and more, and understand, hey, these people are frustrated. Why? What's the sentiment behind it? What are people saying? What needs to be changed so that we can improve the experience there? And again, I think identify potential problem areas as they grow. We were working with a dealership where they were getting negative reviews, and they kept saying, oh, they're negative reviews, people hated them. And all it took was just, you know, doing some quick sentiment analysis on the reviews to realize that there was actually just one specific rep that was always mentioned when there was a negative review. And they always mentioned that this rep was smoking in front of them, or you know, spitting out their chewing tobacco in front of them. And so the dealership was able to go to that individual and just say, hey, look, we've got to turn this around. And guess what? Those negative reviews stopped. So on the surface, it was just negative reviews, but as they dove in deeper and deeper, they found out who the rep was and then what the issue was from there. So competitive benchmarking is also a, you know, it's becoming more and more of a hot topic, and especially with dealerships. What makes dealerships so unique and why I love the auto industry so much is because it is a perfectly competitive market. Everybody has access to the same vehicles, the same colors, the same styles, and so as a result, it really comes down to, hey, who's the best? Which dealerships do a really good job and which ones drop the ball? And so the dealerships that do it right are the ones that are benchmarking themselves. You know, think about when it came to the playground or when it came to sports. We love to see, you know, which teams are doing it the best, especially with football coming back up. You know, a lot of people want to say, hey, what's coach doing this year? Or again, what makes coaches so unique is their ability to watch the playbook, watch the game film, and then to be able to build and mold their players in a way that will help defeat other teams. So think of that as your dealership or as your dealership group. When it comes to competitive benchmarking, you need to understand, where are we at? How do people perceive us? We may think we're the greatest thing since sliced bread, but how does the public perceive us? And it's really easy to do. Again, it's free. And this is simply done just through reviews. The fact that you and I could go and search all of our dealership competitors near us, and we can see what's their current star rating on Google reviews or even Facebook reviews. And then what are the first 6 or 7 comments mentioning about this? And then let's take ours and let's start comparing them together. At Podium, we've actually developed a product called benchmarking, where you can put in 5 or 6 different dealerships around your group, and it will automatically populate and say, how do you compare against star rating, against review generation, and then against most recent reviews. And what we find is that now it gives the company a goal. It's not just, hey, let's go and let's be the best to be the best. It's, hey, we've got to beat these individuals. Find that rivalry, if you will, to compete against something, and just know where you stand. And it will give, you know, your reps and your dealership kind of a purpose of, hey, we've got to get into this because we're number 4 and we've got to be number 1. Or if you are number 1, it's, hey, we're going to just, you know, crush this. We've got to make sure we stay ahead, and make sure we maintain, you know, that competitive edge to that. So some best practices is just, again, identify your competitors. And I think oftentimes you get the question of, hey, should we look at other OEMs, or should we look at just new car buyers bias? Or I even talked to an individual today who said, hey, look, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I don't have anybody within 150 miles, so there's no competition. And what this individual doesn't see is the fact that, look, your competition is all the other used car dealerships. It could be the fact that I work with a dealership who the next closest dealership is 75 miles away, and they mentioned that 40% of their business now comes out of state. Which is amazing. They found a niche that other people don't focus on. Find what criteria, what are you going to use, and then determine the baseline. Where are we starting from and where are we trying to go? And then, again, implement a solution and make sure everybody understands. People love updates, right? They want to know, just like sales goals, where are we pacing? So when it comes to competitive benchmarking, hey, where do we stack against our competitors currently? And again, really the benefit is just gain insights, and then identify areas. And then this last piece, again, when I talked about where sometimes marketing misses it, is to obtain better knowledge of your competitive advantages. As I look at Ken Garff and I see their signs now that say, we hear you, they've nailed it in the sense that now people know I go to Ken Garff because people are going to listen to me. They're going to hear what I have to say. Don't just put up a billboard to put up a billboard or do a radio ad to do a radio ad. Tell a story behind it. What is it that your dealership does better than anybody else? And then share that with your potential customers. So this next area of focus is really trying to get ahead and focus on those key areas. So we talk about text message-based surveys, net promoter surveys. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term net promoter score, it just basically measures the loyalty that exists between businesses and a customer. You've probably seen or taken this before. Basically what it says is on a scale of 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, how likely are you to rate this business? Anything from a 1 to 6 is what we call a detractor, meaning these individuals are basically telling people don't go here. The 7 to 8 are basically a neutral, and then your 9 and 10s are promoters, meaning these are the individuals that are loyal, that are going to be touting your business to other people. They're that customer that refers all your friends and family members and talks about how great you are. So I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, wait, well, we have this CSI thing, so we're not going to mess with it or touch it. My challenge to you would be to think about this in terms of areas where we can focus. That's the great thing about technology today, is be proactive. Don't just sit and wait for a CSI to come back. If you feel like the CSIs have gone down, or if you feel like customers aren't happy, be proactive about it. We have a product that you can launch, just this quick survey feedback, and just get responses. So again, the great thing about NPS is you get a higher response rate, faster response time, and real-time feedback. I have some customers that will launch a quick NPS study on Monday, and by Friday they've collected all the results, or within a week they've collected all their results and know exactly where to focus. So sometimes the questions just are as simple as, hey, on a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate our service center today? Great, why did you give us that score? Or things like, describe your experience in the weight room today. Do you feel like, how would you rate your wait time? Things like that. I think CSI is a more in-depth, longer survey. And the great thing is the key insights and takeaways you get from that. I'd look at NPS, maybe just that little booster that we can throw in the service center one weekend, or we can throw to the service desk another weekend. Basically just trying to get what I call pulses onto what's going on, what are people feeling, and how can we improve in that area. Now, I want to focus on two really what I think are revolutionary products that Google basically just gave to everybody for free. The first one is Google Trends. So write these two down: Google Trends and then Google Shopping Insights. Again, these are killer products that Google just gave out for free. And so what Google Trends does is it's just a tool that shows how often particular search terms are entered in regards to a total search volume. So let's break this down. This is where this becomes extremely helpful. I have dealerships, or know of dealerships, that will say, hey, we're thinking about taking trade-ins on XYZ car. We know what Kelley Blue Book or other Blue Book says. I actually just want to do a quick, I'm going to enter in Google keyword or in the Google Trends. I'm going to see how often do people search for a Kia Optima or for a Toyota Tacoma. And then great thing is Google then spits out this search volume where it will let you know, hey, here's how many times people search for this. And you can see when it spikes and when it comes down. Some of this information you may think, hey, that's a no-brainer. I absolutely know that the best time to sell an SUV is in the winter and the best time to sell a car is in the spring. But my challenge to you would be, what cars are you pushing, and is it at the right time? When we met with Google, one of the great things that they explained to us about Google Trends is the fact that the people who do it right will put in search terms every month, and they'll start to see a certain word start spiking up, and so they'll start to throw those up on advertisements, and they get about a month to a month and a half head start of sales, so that they're the kind of the first in mind or the first option out there. So often what we do is so reactive because we don't have this data. We often say, well, if I knew what the consumer wanted, I'd obviously sell it. This is giving you insights into, hey, what are these people looking for? Well, it'll actually show by demographics as well. If I type in even Ford F-150, it will let me know what areas of the country are searching for it, what the male-female breakdown is, and what the average age is. And you can take that information, put it into your marketing campaign, and be able to get really niche, targeted, focused marketing that's going to deliver a high ROI. So go to Google Trends, play around with it, even enter in, if it's not dealership related, you can enter in any other product there. The other product that I'd put a plug in for as well is Shopping Insights. Now, they don't have this link to car sales, obviously, because they're not, car sales aren't being done necessarily over the web like this, and Google can't track it yet. I know that's something they're working on that'll start coming down. But where dealerships miss that they can see are accessories. You think of all the accessory shops now that are making a killing, even such things, simple things like window tint, that oftentimes we just miss on dealerships. Go to Google Shopping Insights, type in window tint, type in certain, if you're trying to figure out, hey, what rims are cool, what wheels are people buying, start entering in those names, specific names or brand names into Google Shopping Insights, and it will actually start letting you know, hey, the fuel wheels are really hot right now and people are purchasing these like mad. Or look, people aren't buying these types of lights anymore. I would keep a lower inventory because they're not as hot. And the great thing is people are going to say, wait, is this just something you're feeling like, why should we bring this in? And you can say, look, this is what Google Shopping Insights is telling me, and this is why I think we should do it. So again, really the takeaway or the nice things that you get for it is which buzzwords are trending. you're one step ahead. You're starting to get that proactive approach rather than just reactive, and be able to jump ahead there. So again, as we talk about data and analytics, I know that when we think about it, oftentimes we're thinking of all the mountains and mountains of data we're going to have to go through. I promise the best way to approach this is just to start with a simple question of, how do we improve our service center, or what do we do to accomplish this? And then you'll start getting responses. You'll start to find answers through that. And then the other part is to make sure that you have the right tools in place to be able to really get good data. My biggest caution for you, and what I have seen and why sometimes people get a sour taste in their mouth when it comes to data is never going to tell us exactly what price every car should be, but it's going to give us an idea of where we should start. It's going to give us better information of the cars we should use. So again, look to data as more of a storytelling product and helping us understand the narrative behind it, as opposed to the end-all be-all type of information there. So with that, again, appreciate everybody. We'll open it up to some Q&A here. Really appreciate you all staying on, and love to answer any questions that you may have from here.
Excellent presentation, Dan. Thank you so much for the great insights and recommendations to help your store improve the use of data. And as just a reminder, we are recording today's session, so be on the lookout for a message containing a link to watch the recording again or share it with other individuals at your store. And if you have questions for Dan Wright, who's the Regional Director of Auto Sales at Podium, please use the questions box on the GoToWebinar control panel. And Dan, like to begin with several questions that have come in and along the same lines regarding an early part of your presentation, talking about all of the data and how there could be 3, 4, 5 different places where it comes to the dealership, and different logins and all of those hurdles that need to be cleared to gather all of that data. If you could, what has been your experiences with other stores? How have they streamlined their data sources into a single place? How long did it take? What type of solutions worked for different stores to streamline that part of their operation?
Yeah, great question, and one that I think, it's kind of like when we hit New Year's and it's January 1st, and the first goal is, all right, my goal now is to lose weight. Where do I start? The gym or the lunchroom? What do I need to focus on? And so really, as we look at this, again, I think it's important that we don't necessarily focus on the goal, but just what solutions are we going to start putting in place that are just daily habits. And so one is, what is going to be your true source of record? Whether, hey, everything needs to funnel into a CRM or everything needs to be consolidated. Again, I was amazed. I worked with a dealership recently and just said, tell me where you store data. And we at first thought it was 2 or 3 areas, and then we found out it was actually 9 different areas. And so I think first step is just identify what do we have, and then the second is what systems can talk to each other. And if you can get on the phone with a rep from really just about any company and just say, hey, do you have an API or a way to integrate into our CRM or into XYZ product? It was actually one of the things we focused on this year because we understand the importance of what we call a true source of record. That's really where you want to begin. The nice thing is, once you have the data into one area, I always say, look, you want small wins, right? So if I can just get up and get to the gym one morning, that's a win for me. I'm going to be pumped on that. So maybe just start with one question that you and your dealership have that you would love to figure out. Maybe it's something as simple as, how can we improve our service center? Or, you know, what would be super helpful for our customers? And let's just start with that, and then we can send out quick surveys or quick information. Maybe even just start with Google Trends as far as, hey, what are the really hot selling cars right now? And just start entering those in. It's kind of one of those things where if I try to run a marathon today, I'd pass out and never touch my running shoes again. But just get a small win, and it gets me excited in the morning to go do something else. So if you can consolidate that, start with maybe just one question, and then as you start to build this culture of data and in business intelligence, you'll actually start to see more people get on board and say, hey, let's start giving you more money to accomplish this product. I've actually seen people who basically created their own job position because of how well they were at this. And then they would use we refer to them usually as BI tools or dashboards, business intelligence dashboards, where they'll basically take information from your CRM or somewhere else and then pipe it into a dashboard. I think there's a company called Vista Dash that does really well with it. Things like Domo, Grow.com, all have that information or that ability to take data, put it into an area that's digestible, and then be able to create different things of different areas. I think where people miss the mark is they don't start with a question in mind, and they get data into one area, and then they just think, well, now what? So again, it's always great to start with a question, and then from there you're able to really build out some information. But again, those tools, and in things like sentiment analysis, Podium even has a product called sentiment analysis, and you know, we always love to offer people discount codes for listening to me speak. I know what a hassle that can be. So where we can take all of your reviews, put it through to sentiment analysis, and then be able to say, here are the top 10 words that customers are saying and how they feel about it. So those are areas where you can start and kind of get a jump start on. But I always like to say, go for a quick, easy win. Don't try and slay the dragon. Just find something unique that you can do and then start from there.
The voice you're hearing is our special guest expert for our webinar. He's Dan Wright, the Regional Director of Auto Sales at Podium. In our webinar again today, Data Analytics 101. Learn the best ways to use data to identify what your customers want. And Dan's contact information is there on the screen if you wanted to reach out directly to him with perhaps some questions very specific about your dealership and how you should proceed. And Dan, also in your presentation, you touched on the importance of benchmarking and how stores need to keep close, if they aren't already, keep close tabs on the competitors in their markets. Maybe an extension of benchmarking, how valuable, or have you seen kind of the 20 group kind of example where, if, say, I'm a Honda store in Dallas, and I might do some online research to see what successful Honda stores in Nashville or Las Vegas or Pittsburgh might be doing. How much can dealerships glean from successful operations, perhaps outside of their immediate circle?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, I think we like to live in these, I'll refer to them as bubbles, where we say, hey, I probably need to do some sort of benchmarking, and I know competition's good, so I'm gonna go and just figure out, hey, what are people saying, or how do I stack up? But you know, you hit the nail right on the head there, where again, the best dealerships that we know will find examples of dealerships that just crush it, right? So the top, if you're looking at maybe the top 150 dealerships that was just recently published, that's where I would start. Is just say, hey, if these guys are so important, what are they doing, and how can I you know, kind of glean in or listen in from them as far as the top insight. So I actually wouldn't, if I'm the top person in my group, I would actually be nervous, because what I find is we're basically the sum of the people around us. I would find people out of my area and out of my region, and I would say, I want to know who the top person is. And not that I'm trying to imitate them necessarily, but I may take some key good ideas for them, and then I'm going to incorporate a whole new and different method to really lead me and put me in a different area. You never know, to your point. I'm amazed at, you know, I go all over the country, and it's so interesting to me to see what people do on the East Coast versus West Coast versus the Midwest. And people just say, hey, that works for them, won't work for us. And I think, you know, it's too bad you view it that way, because there's a lot of great insights and information that you'll hear from other individuals, and not necessarily the 20 group, I get that. But just reading what the comments are about what these dealerships are doing, I you know, interestingly enough, I talked to a dealership that has only women sales reps, and it was a new idea, and they're killing it. People love the fact that they're being paired with women when they go and service things, and not that, you know, we're trying to create any gender biases here, but just things like that you probably would never key into unless you looked outside of your bubble and looked around at what other people were doing, and just saying, hey, that's great that we are doing incredibly well in our 20 group, but what about the rest of the world? What about the rest of the dealerships? What are they doing? Are the things that we could incorporate from them?
Excellent, excellent. Well, again, our special guest for our webinar is Dan Wright, who's part of the automotive team at Podium. And Dan, to close our time here today, if you could just, you described at the top how it's data can be overwhelming at times when you think about how big that apple might be. Just again, if it could close with just giving some suggestions on maybe an initial step or two that dealerships of all sizes can take to get their arms wrapped around the data that might be available to help them move more metal and keep the service drive going.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that, because at the end of the day, look, the only reason we're talking about this, and you hit the nail on the head there, the only reason we're talking about this is because you need to sell more cars or service more people. And so what it comes down to is we all have businesses, and we all know that there's room for improvements. And oftentimes as we think about, again, going to the doctor, we know these symptoms, or we feel these symptoms. Maybe I have a stuffy nose, or maybe my throat is sore. But if I don't dig down deeper to figure out what the problem is, then I'm just solving these symptoms. Again, as we talk about, and really any dealership can capitalize this, I don't care if you're 150 miles from the nearest dealership, or if you're in the middle of the most competitive area in the entire United States. As we look at things like absorption rate, car sales, the economy, there is a reason why certain dealerships just do well no matter what. And the people who will just always say, oh, they got lucky, or they're just good at what they just have the right staff, or that dealership has everything given to them. That's not the case. I've been there on site. I've talked to these individuals. And the greatest part, again, as we look at all of this data, is it's free. You've never lived in a time where you could just put in a simple search and get more data and insights into consumers and what consumer wants than now, because all of that data is free and available at your fingertips. And if you're not taking advantage of that, I mean, you might as well just go back to your filing cabinet, because there's nothing to be learned there. So starting today, again, I would challenge everybody on this webinar, as you have Google Trends, Shopping Insights written down, write down one question. What is the one thing that you want to solve at the dealership? What's a question that you have? And then let's just start there. I promise the great thing is you're going to go down this journey. You're going to feel like a detective of, hey, why are we not selling this? Or, hey, why is it that service is kind of slowed down a bit? And as you start going through the data, you're going to get more and more excited because it feels like you're on an adventure and you're looking at what are our reviews saying versus what are the surveys saying. And then you're going to start to talk to people in person and mention, hey, you know, how was everything today? And then you're going to have some ideas surface up, and you're going to, it's not big changes, but you'll make small tweaks in these areas. Maybe something as simple as somebody greeting an individual, or somebody leaving a cookie on the dashboard, a warm, nice cookie on the dashboard of someone who just got their car service saying, hey, thanks, have a cookie on us. Things like that are really going to stand out, and you're going to start to see things pick up in the service center, and everyone's going to be scratching their heads and thinking, wait a minute, how did you know that, or where did you get that data? Did you just come up with that? And you're going to be able to have this, you know, really tool in the back pocket where you can be successful no matter where you go or what you're doing, because you know exactly where to go to solve those problems and how to fix those things. So again, start from there. I'm excited for everyone to get up and going. Thanks so much for staying on. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach Dan at podium.com. Would love to chat and talk more about how that works.
Again, that's our special guest expert, Dan Wright, the Regional Director of Auto Sales at Podium. Dan, thank you so much for the great information and advice. A lot of material for stores to consider to improve. So again, thank you for the great insight. And thank you everyone for joining us, and all the best for continued success at your dealership. So we look forward to having you again next time. Thank you.